And two of the other Christie allies now are awaiting trial in federal court. And hanging over all of this never-ending legal drama has always been the key political questions. What exactly was Chris Christie's role in all of this? What did he know? When did he know it? And could he ever face any legal action himself? And that's where that report tonight comes from. According to the New York Observer newspaper, this man is about to plead guilty to a felony. His name is David Sampson, and if you don't know that name, here's the key. He's very powerful, and he's a close mentor and confidant of Chris Christie. It was Christie who, as governor, appointed Sampson to be the chairman of the Port Authority, which oversees the George Washington Bridge, among other things. And this new report says that Sampson is expected to plead guilty to one felony charge related to one of the many issues brought to light by the Bridgegate investigation. Now, one of the theories that's been out there these past few years is that Sampson basically represents the biggest potential legal threat that Christie faces in this whole drama. The theory goes something like this. If prosecutors could corner Sampson, he would naturally want to find a way out. And since Sampson is a really big fish, the only way he'd be able to get out would be to cut a plea deal and to turn on Christie. This possibility has been speculated on a lot, and we need to stress it has all been speculation. But now, here it is, a report that Sampson is ready to plead guilty. So, is this the nightmare for Chris Christie that so many people have thought it would be? Well, here's the key line from the New York Observer's report. Quote, according to a former prosecutor with intimate knowledge of the players in what's become known as the Bridgegate affair, Sampson will be indicted and plead guilty to a one-count felony. He will not be cooperating with the government. He will not be cooperating. Translation, Christie has nothing to worry about. Even if Sampson knows something that prosecutors might be interested in, and we have no idea if he does, but even if he does, this report says he's not going to be sharing it. So all that chatter that David Sampson will be the undoing of Chris Christie, at least according to this report, it doesn't look like it's happening. Now, wait for a second, because here's where that story behind the story comes in. Look back at that money quote I just read from the article. According to a former prosecutor with intimate knowledge of the players in what's become known as the Bridgegate affair. And that's the source for this story in the New York Observer, a former federal prosecutor, intimate knowledge of the players in Bridgegate. Obviously, this is an anonymous source, and that happens a lot in journalism, not an uncommon thing there. But that's a very specific description of this source with this blockbuster information, a source talking to the New York Observer. The New York Observer, which is owned by Jared Kushner. And who's Jared Kushner? Jared Kushner is married to Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump, of course, Donald Trump's daughter. So Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump's husband, has emerged also as a key inside player in his father-in-law's presidential campaign. Jared Kushner, also the owner of the New York Observer, that newspaper has enthusiastically endorsed Trump's campaign in the Republican primary. And the author of this story we're talking about tonight, the author of this story in the New York Observer, is Ken Kurson. Ken Kurson is the editor of the Observer. He also gave input on a major speech that Trump delivered a few months ago to the annual AIPAC conference. So you put all of that together, and it's fair to say that as newspapers go, there are not many out there. There really aren't any out there that are as close to the Trump campaign as the New York Observer. And, of course, who is one of Trump's top supporters right now? One of his only outspoken supporters from the Republican political establishment? Well, it's Chris Christie. Christie, who is reportedly very interested in serving as Trump's running mate. That's a decision Trump is going to have to make in the next 2 weeks. And this, the question of Bridgegate, the question of whether he might still somehow be implicated, well, this has been one of the biggest knocks against Christie's chances of landing on the Trump ticket. But now, here's a newspaper that is closer to the Trump campaign, closer to the Trump family than any newspaper in America. And suddenly it is reporting the blockbuster news that would seem to make it a lot easier for Trump to put Christie on the ticket. But if you think that means something, well, there's another twist to all of the story behind the story here. Try this one on for size. Christie, when he was the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, made his name with a high-profile prosecution of a major real estate developer and political donor. This was a sordid case. From the summer of 2004, the developer, quote, pleaded guilty on Wednesday to trying to compromise a witness in a campaign finance investigation by setting him up with a prostitute and secretly videotaping the sexual encounter. The plea came in a case that the federal prosecutor called a clear example of corruption in the state's political culture. That was back in 2004. I covered that story back then. It is the story I would tell everyone when they asked me what covering New Jersey politics was like. The politically connected developer who hired the very expensive prostitutes in a retaliation scheme. Now, who was the politically connected developer who Chris Christie made his name prosecuting over this? Well, his name was Charles Kushner, as in Charles Kushner, the father of Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump. Jared Kushner, the owner of the New York Observer. The New York Observer, the newspaper that's now reporting that Christie is about to catch a big break on Bridgegate at just the moment that Christie needs to catch a big break. What does this all mean? Well, I've talked to a bunch of people in New Jersey tonight. I used to cover that world. I also, full disclosure here, used to write for the New York Observer. Jared Kushner's paper, they laid me off. I try not to take it too personally. But everybody I talked to tonight is baffled by this. So maybe this means a lot, the fact that this story at this moment is appearing in the New York Observer. Maybe it means something we haven't even imagined. And maybe it's all one big red herring, but it is one of the biggest and definitely the weirdest in a whole bunch of new developments in the Veep stakes. The latest on who Donald Trump might ask to run with him and who would actually say yes is next.